The American Civil War and what caused it. Find out today. My name's Arison Jurkinen, and this is the Arison Jurkinen Show. Before we get into it, first, I'm not a big fan of big government and big tech looking through my data, and neither should you. That's why I use ExpressVPN. Head on over to expressvpn.com and use code BIGTECH to get your first month free. That's expressvpn.com. Now, the U.S. Civil War was without a doubt the bloodiest conflict in U.S. history, with over 600,000 casualties. There's been a lot of historical debate surrounding the Civil War, but more specifically, its causes, and that's a debate that continues to this day. In this episode, we are going to cover a few of these historical arguments to give an insight into the causes of the war, but also to see how these debates have changed over time. So firstly, we're going to discuss Frank L. Owsley and his egocentric sectionalism theory. Owsley argued that the Civil War was primarily caused by economic and social tensions between North and South rather than slavery. Owsley's argument was based on his belief that the South was primarily an agricultural society, and that its economy was threatened by Northern industrialization and the high tariffs that protected Northern manufacturers from foreign competition, and that the issue of slavery was mainly used as a political tool to rally support for the Union cause. Another argument is the states' rights arguments of Forrest McDonald Jr. McDonald argues the conflict between North and South was rooted in the different interpretations of the U.S. Constitution and the nature of federalism. He argued that the North viewed the Constitution as a higher law that gave the federal government broad powers to regulate economic and social activity, while the South believed in a more strict interpretation of the Constitution that reserved most powers for the states. James N. McPherson took social history to make his argument. He concludes that the ultimate cause of the Civil War was the issue of slavery. He argues that among Confederate soldiers, white supremacy and the right of property in slaves were at the core of the ideology for which Confederate soldiers fought. He also explains that Union soldiers primarily fought to preserve the United States as a country. They fought to end slavery as well, stating that the restoration of the Union was the main goal for which they fought. They became convinced that this goal was unattainable without striking against slavery. Some argue that slavery was the central issue that caused the war. Others argue it was a rapid and aggressive northern expansion. Some argue that it was an issue of federalism. We may never know the true causes of the war, whether it was a single cause, a combination of those previously mentioned, or an underlying cause that we are not privy to. But at least history and historiography can help us examine, counter, and support these theories and interpretations.